Hey everyone, welcome to Mad Backyard. Today we're going to show you how to make some easy smoked pork chops on a pellet grill. We'll be using our Pit Boss Pro Series 1150 today, but you can follow along this recipe using whatever pellet grill you have. We'll show you the best kind of pork chops to buy for smoking, one of our favorite seasonings to use on them, and how to get a lot of extra smoke flavor no matter what kind of pellet grill you're using. Go ahead and start up your pellet grill, let it run through the startup cycle, and set the temperature to 180 degrees or the smoke setting if your pellet grill has that feature. Today we're going to be using these Plum wood pellets from Knotty Wood. We always like using good quality pellets when smoking on a lower temperature setting. My favorite kind of pork chops for smoking are thick cut bone-in pork chops. They hold up a lot better in the smoker. They usually have a lot more fat on them, as you can see, and we're not going to trim any of that off. It's going to help kind of keep everything moist while they're smoking. The thinner ones are fine if you just want to be done cooking faster, but they do tend to dry out a little bit and they cook before they really have enough time to absorb a lot of smoke flavor. And these are about 3/4 of a pound each. You can see that they're about an inch thick. So these are my favorite kind to smoke on a pellet grill or an electric smoker or whatever I'm using. So I'm starting with these today. Today on our smoked pork chops, we're going to use this Gospel all-purpose barbecue rub from Meat Church. It's got a lot of good all-around flavor. I like using it on chicken and pork especially. It does have sugar in it, so make sure you're watching your smoking temperatures. If you're going to sear your pork chops, I would stay away from a rub with sugar in it. Stick with something more like Bad Byron's Butt Rub or Meat Church's Holy Cow. Put links to those down below. They're really good rubs to use when you're trying to avoid sugar. Sugar tends to burn over 325 degrees. We're going to be keeping our pork chops below that today, so we're fine using any kind of rub we want. Sprinkle the rub on all sides of the pork chops. You don't need to use oil or any kind of binder to get the rub to stick. I used to use cooking oil on pork chops and chicken to help the rub stick better, but I found they ended up blocking smoke flavor from getting to the meat and kept the rub from working its way into the meat itself. The rub will actually create a paste on its own if you just give it a little bit of time. We're gonna let the rub set on the meat for about 30 minutes or so before we put our pork chops on the smoker. Just like we do with our ribs, this will help the rub kind of work its way into the meat a little more to flavor it a little better. It'll also draw a little bit of moisture out on the outside, creating more of a paste. That way when we put it on, the rub's less likely to come right off, and that wet paste on the outside is going to do a better job of absorbing smoke flavor right in the beginning. While we're waiting for the rub to set in, we'll go ahead and get our firebox started so we can get some extra smoke flavor on these pork chops. While we can get some smoke flavor from the pellets themselves on a low temperature setting, we made a video showing you how to get even more smoke flavor on a pellet grill using a small homemade firebox that's really easy to set up. It works especially well on these shorter cooks where you're trying to get a lot of smoke flavor on the meat before it finishes cooking. I'll put a link to that video down in the description if you want to see how we do it from start to finish. Basically, we're going to use some lit charcoal and wood chunks to give us real wood burning flavor on our smoked pork chops. Today I'm using some Hickory Wood Chunks because I really like the way hickory smoke tastes on pork. These ones from Wheter are a good size to fit in the smoke box we use as well. Our smoke box is ready to go. We've got the hickory wood on here. I'm going to go ahead and put the lid on, and then I'm going to leave it right in the loaf pan here. That way any ashes that fall through, they're just going to stay in the loaf pan and not get all over the grates of the grill. So just like we showed in our video on how to set this up, I'll put a link to it down below. We're going to put this towards the back of the pellet grill. We want to keep it away from the temperature probe because that's going to mess with our temperature reading from the heat from the charcoal that's getting put off. So we're going to put it in the back here so we get that smoke flowing over the pork chops and out the exhaust chimney, but away from the temperature probe. So let's go ahead and get our pork chops on. You can see by letting the rub set in the meat for about 30 minutes or so, we really drew a lot of moisture out of the pork chops. And this is a good thing because it's letting the rub actually work its way down into the meat. This moisture on the outside is what's going to help absorb a lot of our smoke flavor. Wet meat absorbs smoke better than dry meat. So you really want to just be patient and give it time to set up on the meat before you go throwing it on the smokers. I like having these nitrile gloves. Make sure you get the food safe ones over my cloth liners here. It's just a lot easier than messing with tongs and spatulas on the grill, especially when you start needing to flip the meat and move it around. So we're just gonna get these over. I oiled these grates too, just so you know, so the meat doesn't stick, especially when you're using sugar or sugary rubs. That's when you need to be careful about things sticking. So I just sprayed a light cooking oil on the grates. I'm putting them over on the right side because that tends to be the cooler side of my pellet grill. And also that'll allow the smoke to really travel over the pork chops on its way out the exhaust chimney. We're gonna keep the pellet grill on the smoke setting or 180 degrees, whichever your model offers, so they can absorb plenty of smoke flavor from the pellets as well as the hickory smoke from our smoke box and slowly come up in temperature so that they don't finish cooking before they've had time to absorb smoke flavor. Okay, the pork chops have been on for about 45 minutes or so. I went ahead and put our meter thermometer in one of the thicker ones. You can see it's up to 111 internally here. The meter's kind of nice because you can just pick what kind of meat you're cooking, and it tells you exactly what your final internal temperature should be. For pork chops or pork loin, it should usually be it should always be 145 degrees final internal temperature. So it's nice, you don't have to go Googling what the internal temperature should be when they're done cooking. So we're at about 111 there. They've been on 45 minutes, like I said. On a pellet grill, a lot of our heat comes from below. So I'm gonna go ahead and flip these. I'm gonna keep that bone facing to the left, and I'm actually gonna kind of rotate them a little bit too, because the ones in the back are probably cooking a little faster than the ones in the front. So we're gonna go ahead and flip these over. Just let them continue to smoke here for maybe another 15-20 minutes, and then we'll go ahead and turn the heat up and finish them off. The pork chops have been on the pellet grill for a little over an hour, and we're gonna turn our temperature up now. So we've been on the smoke setting, so it's been running around 180 degrees. We're gonna go ahead and turn this up to 300, and that's about as high as we wanna go without burning our sugar, but to get some extra heat on the pork chop. So we're gonna set it at 300 degrees. And if you come take a look, the reason we're doing this is, yes, we could technically leave it at 180 and it would eventually come up to 145 internally. You can see we're at about 119 here on the meter thermometer. The ambient temperature, I opened the lid, but it's about 157 degrees. It's having a hard time even figuring out how much longer it would take, because it would be a while to get all the way up to 145 degrees on this setting. So that's why we're turning it up. You can hear that flame kind of kicking up a little bit here. And the reason I'm turning it up is because, yes, pork is done at 145 degrees, but none of this fat on the outside we see here, or even next to the bones, will render if we just leave it on that low setting. So we've had it on the low setting so that we can get lots of smoke flavor and give it time to absorb smokiness without overcooking it. But now we really need to turn up the heat, let it finish cooking, try to render out some of this fat, and go from there. So I've also got a sauce here. We're gonna be using our Blues Hog Raspberry Chipotle sauce. This stuff is really good. If you guys haven't tried it out, I highly recommend it. So we're gonna brush a little sauce on here. The nice thing with turning the temperature up is it'll help the sauce kind of caramelize on the outside a little more than it otherwise would. So I'm just gonna get these sauced up a little bit. We may add 2 or 3 layers of this as they continue cooking. We'll see how much longer they really end up taking. And we'll do both sides and the edges here. And we're gonna cook them until they hit 140 degrees. And then we're gonna take them off and let them rest so they come up the rest of the way to 145. And then they'll be ready. So our internal temperature is up to 143 degrees on this one, actually close to 145. So we're gonna go ahead and get these off. They're gonna rise another couple degrees or so while they're resting. So we're gonna go ahead and take these off, and then we'll see how they look. We've let the pork chops rest for a few minutes here just to finish coming up in temperature, those last couple degrees. We're gonna slice into one and see how they came out here. Really tender, good smoke flavor, great seasoning from that meat church rub we put on, and that raspberry chipotle barbecue sauce. I'm telling you, you gotta try it out. Tons of smoke flavor, really good. We hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to check out the full step-by-step recipe at madbackyard.com. I'll put a link to it down in the description below. There's also a ton of other recipes and pellet grill resources there for you to check out. I'll also put links to all the other videos I mentioned today, as well as products we used, down in the description. Thanks for watching.